On October 9, Pakistan launched a surprise airstrike on the border areas of Afghanistan's Paktika province, with reports of explosions even near Kabul city. The very next day, Afghan Taliban forces launched a coordinated counterattack on Pakistan's border outposts. Thus began one of the most intense border clashes in recent times, resulting in casualties on both sides. Pakistan claims that the militant group Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan is using Afghan soil to launch attacks on Pakistan, and that the airstrike was an act of self-defense. On the other hand, the Taliban government stated Pakistan violated their airspace, and in defense of their sovereignty, they were compelled to retaliate. But the roots of this tension run much deeper, buried in a history over a century old. The borderline between the two countries is known as the Durand Line. In 1893, British Foreign Secretary Sir Mortimer Durand drew this boundary. Although the then Afghan ruler agreed to it, the local Pashtun population never accepted it. That's because the same ethnic group live on both sides of the border. Pashtun. They never considered themselves separate nations, instead viewing the boundary as a Western political conspiracy. So, despite international law drawing a line between the two countries, locals still see themselves as one people, and the border remains practically ineffective. That's the perspective of the local people. But the Afghan government shares a similar view. Although Afghan rulers during British colonial times accepted the boundary, after the British left, the Afghan government annulled the Durand Agreement in 1949. Since then, Pakistan has repeatedly tried to persuade Afghanistan to change its stance. But Afghanistan has consistently rejected it. And the Pashtun continue to live as their ancestors did for centuries, ignoring the border. Pakistan has tried many times to erect barbed wire fences here, and each time, locals have cut them down. This region is sometimes referred to as Pashtunistan. Its center is the city of Peshawar in present-day Pakistan. It's here that various Islamic militant groups emerged. In the 1980s, during the Afghan War, Pakistan and the United States trained and supported anti-Soviet mujahideen here, which eventually led to the rise of the Taliban. In the 1990s, Pakistan directly supported the Taliban in taking power in Afghanistan. But after the 9/11 attacks in the United States in 2001, when America invaded Afghanistan, Pakistan found itself in a complex situation. U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell called Pakistan's President Pervez Musharraf and said, "You are either with us or against us. That is, either cooperate with us or fight us." Pakistan, under pressure, chose cooperation. Under U.S. pressure, they banned several militant groups and tried to control some religious groups deemed extremist. At that time, Pakistan was walking a tightrope, on one hand, approving U.S. drone strikes in border areas, and on the other, publicly condemning them. This duplicity led Pakistan to become a victim of severe terrorism itself. Between 2001 and 2020, over 50,000 Pakistani civilians were killed in various militant attacks. Of course, Pakistan had no other option. It didn't have the strength to fight the US, and it couldn't dare to ignore the public support for the Taliban or Al-Qaeda within Pakistan. So it was a very difficult decision for them. The Pakistani military had to go against the very Taliban leaders they had trained in the 1990s and with whom they had friendly ties. The Taliban responded by taking control of many tribal areas along the Pakistani border. They made 3 failed attempts to assassinate Pervez Musharraf and later killed his potential political successor Benazir Bhutto. Anyway, in 2021, after US forces withdrew from Afghanistan, the Taliban returned to power. At that time, Islamabad felt a sense of confidence. Pakistan's military and intelligence agencies believed, since the Taliban were their creation, they would protect Pakistan's interests in Afghanistan. But in reality, the opposite happened. As soon as the Taliban regained power, they distanced themselves from Pakistan. They adopted an Afghan nationalist stance, where patriotism outweighed Islamic brotherhood. The Afghan Taliban believe their land will never be under foreign influence, not even Pakistan's. And this is where Pakistan's strategy failed. Though Afghan Taliban and Pakistani Taliban are separate entities, they share ideological ties. The Afghan government has repeatedly told Pakistan there is no TTP presence on their soil, but Pakistani intelligence claims they are taking shelter in Afghan border areas. And this dispute has now escalated into a border war. Pakistan says the Taliban are failing to protect the border, while the Taliban say Pakistan is violating Afghanistan's sovereignty. Trade relations between the two countries have collapsed, and with the border closed, ordinary people are suffering. Today, Pakistan realizes the fire it once lit in someone else's house is now burning its own border. And Afghanistan knows, as long as that dividing line called the Durand Line exists, peace will remain a mere illusion. History may be repeating itself, where a line drawn by superpowers continues to shape the fate of two nations.